My name is Adrienne Calloway. Everyone calls me Adie. I'm 37 years old. 19 years ago, my own parents put me out on the street for being pregnant at 16. A duffel bag, a February storm, and my mother standing in the doorway telling me I had disgraced the family name. By midnight that same night, they'd already called their attorney. By the next morning, there was a notarized letter cutting me and any child I ever had out of the family completely. I kept that letter. I never threw anything away. For almost 2 decades, I didn't exist to them. They told their entire social circle I'd moved to Australia to study, and they built a flawless reputation on top of a lie about a daughter they threw into the snow. Then 3 weeks ago, they showed up on my doorstep, all smiles, begging to meet their grandson. A grandson they'd been bragging about for the better part of a year to 300 of their closest friends. They handed me a check for $300,000. What they didn't know was that the grandson they'd invented in their heads didn't exist at all. And what they actually found waiting for them was about to blow their perfect 50 years apart in front of everyone who mattered to them. Stay with me, because the middle of this story is the part nobody sees coming, and the ending isn't the one you're expecting either. Denver, Colorado, February 2005. I was 16, a sophomore at Immaculate Heart Academy, the youngest of Warren and Louise Calloway's 3 children. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect family. My father ran a well-known corporate law firm downtown, Calloway & Voss, founded in 1986. My mother had chaired the parish council at Cornerstone Baptist for 6 straight years. We had the reserved pew, the color-coordinated Sunday outfits my mother laid out the night before, the whole performance. But every household has its pecking order, and I learned mine before I could spell it. My brother Preston was 23, already in his 2nd year of law school, groomed to inherit my father's firm. My sister Vanessa was 21, studying to be a teacher, sweet and obedient and never once out of line. And then there was me. My mother used to call me the accident. Born when she was 36, 5 years after she thought her childbearing years were behind her. I don't think she ever fully forgave me for showing up uninvited. It wasn't loud, the way they treated me differently. It was quiet, constant. The hallway gallery of family photos somehow never had room for my school portrait. Dinner table conversation orbited around Preston's mock trials or Vanessa's student teaching placement. When I made honor roll, my father would glance at the report card, mutter, "Good for you, Adie," and go right back to asking Preston about his internship. I learned early to take up less space, to want less, to need less. My father had a favorite line he trotted out at every holiday gathering: "A reputation takes 30 years to build and 30 seconds to lose." I had no idea back then that I would become the 30 seconds he was so afraid of. I met Eli Marsh at the downtown public library. It sounds like nothing, but that library was the only place on earth where nobody compared me to my siblings. I went 3 afternoons a week, telling my parents I was studying. Really, I just needed somewhere to breathe. Eli went to Lincoln High, the public school my parents pretended didn't exist on the map. He was 17, worked weekends at his uncle's transmission shop, and he had this quiet, steady way about him. He found me crying in the periodical section one afternoon in October, after my mother had forgotten to pick me up from school for the 3rd time that month. He just sat down across from me and asked if I was okay. Nobody had asked me that in years. We dated in secret for almost 3 months. He was patient and kind, and for the first time in my life I felt like a person instead of a mistake somebody was managing. Then came a Tuesday in January, standing in a gas station bathroom 3 miles from campus, staring at 2 pink lines on a test I'd bought with quarters from my locker. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I told Eli he didn't run, he didn't flinch. He held both my hands and told me we'd figure it out together, that I wasn't alone in this. Part of me wanted so badly to believe him, but I knew my parents. I knew that the very first words out of their mouths wouldn't be, "Are you okay?" They'd be, "What will people say?" I decided to tell them at Sunday dinner. I had no idea it would be the last meal I'd ever eat in that house. Sunday, February 9th, 2005. 7:40 in the evening. I remember the pot roast was dry because I stared at it the entire time, trying to find the nerve to open my mouth while my father complained about a zoning dispute and my mother mentally seated guests for the spring gala. "I need to tell you something," I finally said. The table went silent. 4 faces turned toward me, my parents, Preston home for the weekend, Vanessa visiting from college. 8 weeks along, and I couldn't hide it much longer. "I'm pregnant." My mother's fork hit the plate. My father didn't move a muscle. "Who's the father?" he said, ice in every syllable. "Someone from your school, someone we know. His name is Eli Marsh. He goes to Lincoln High. He works at his uncle's garage." My mother's face drained of color. "You've been sneaking around with a public school boy. He's a good person, Mom. He's..." What does his father do? My father cut in. He lives with his uncle, he fixes cars. The quiet that followed lasted 11 full seconds. I counted everyone, then my father stood up. You will not be keeping it. My mother started to say something and he cut her off too. She will not drag this family's name through the mud. He looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on the carpet. If you keep that baby, you are no longer part of this family. By 9 o'clock that night I was standing on the porch with one duffel bag, snow soaking through my coat. My mother opened the door and pointed at the driveway. Not my father, my mother. Preston and Vanessa watched from the upstairs window. Neither one came down the stairs. I called Eli from the payphone outside the gas station down the block, my fingers so numb I could barely hit the buttons. He picked up on the second ring. They kicked me out, was all I managed to say. 20 minutes later his uncle's pickup truck screeched to a stop and Eli was out the door before it even fully braked, wrapping me in his own jacket while I sobbed into his chest. I've got you, he kept saying. I've got you. We had $90 between the two of us, a truck that needed new brakes and nowhere on earth to go. That's when Dorothy Whitfield saved my life. Everyone called her Miss Dot. She lived 2 houses down from my parents, 64 years old, a retired ICU nurse, the only person on that entire street who never bowed and scraped to my father. She'd watched me standing in the snow from her front window. She'd seen enough. You can stay with me, she said when I knocked on her door close to 11 at night. For as long as you need. 2 weeks in her guest room, and then Eli found us a 1-room apartment above a dry cleaner's for $390 a month, the whole place smelling like starch and second-hand hope. My parents' lawyer had the papers drawn up that very same night. I know because my father mailed me a copy 3 days later, certified, signature required, like I was closing on a house. The document said Adrienne Louise Calloway forfeited any and all inheritance, and that the Calloway family bore no legal or moral obligation to her, or, I quote, any offspring thereof. I kept that paper. I've had it for 19 years now. Wren Adele Calloway Marsh was born on August 3, 2005 at St. Mercy Hospital in Denver. 6 pounds 11 ounces. Her father's dark eyes, my stubborn chin. She came into the world screaming and I remember thinking, good scream. Make them hear you. Don't ever let anyone make you small. If you're the kind of person who's ever been made to feel like your own family only wanted a version of you, drop a same in the comments right now, because it gets so much heavier from here, and trust me, you want to be here for what happens at that anniversary party. The next 5 years blurred into pure survival. Eli pulled double shifts at a body shop in Aurora while I finished my GED, then started community college 2 classes at a time, whatever fit around Wren's naps. We lived off instant noodles and day-old bread from the bakery bin. I got good at making a $1 stretch until it screamed for mercy. I mailed my parents a birth announcement. Nothing back, a photo on her first birthday. Silence. By her second birthday I stopped trying entirely. Eli and I kept saying we'd get married once we had the money for a real wedding. Once things calmed down, someday kept sliding further away. Then on a Tuesday in April 2009, a drunk driver blew through a red light on Colfax Avenue. Eli was riding his motorcycle home from the night shift. The officer at my door told me it was instant. He was 25. Wren was 3. The life insurance through his job paid out $9,000. That was the entire worth the world assigned to 25 years of a good man's life. I was 21, a single mother with a 3-year-old, $9,000, and not one single person to call. I could have folded right there. I didn't. I'd already been doing small side jobs while Eli was alive, decorating apartments for neighbors who couldn't afford a real designer, staging houses for realtors willing to gamble on a girl with no portfolio and no degree. People kept telling me I had an eye for it, a gift for making a cramped little room feel like somewhere you'd want to stay. After Eli died, I threw myself into that work like my survival depended on it, because it did. In 2011, I met Patricia Doyle at a design seminar at a community college downtown. She was 54, recently retired as creative director of a major firm, restless and looking for a project. For reasons I still don't fully understand, she picked me. There's real talent in here, she told me after flipping through my portfolio. Rough, unpolished, but real. Let me help you shape it. 3 years later, with her mentorship and an $18,000 small business loan that took me 3 tries to get approved, I opened Wildflower Interiors out of a converted supply closet in a shared office space. By 2018, we had 7 employees. By 2022, revenue north of $1 million a year. That same year, the Denver Business Journal ran a feature, From Teen Mom to CEO, the Adrienne Calloway story. The reporter spent 3 days with me, digging into the pregnancy at 16, getting disowned, losing Eli, building a company out of literally nothing. I told her everything except my parents' actual last name. Not to protect them, to protect Ren from anyone connecting the dots back to people who wished she'd never been born. By this year we had 18 employees and just over $3.5 million in annual revenue, a corner office with a view of the mountains, and my daughter, 19 now, a sophomore at the State University, studying psychology, fierce and sharp and exactly the woman I always hoped she'd become. 19 years with zero contact from the Calloway family, until 3 weeks ago. Here's the part where things start moving fast, so pay attention, because everything you think you know about how this ends is about to be wrong. A Tuesday evening, 6:45. I'd just gotten home from a client walkthrough, a tech founder redoing her whole Mountain View property, an $800,000 contract. My head was still full of fabric swatches when I turned onto my street and saw the car. A silver Range Rover, Colorado plates I didn't recognize at first, and then I did, and my stomach dropped through the floor. I sat in my driveway for a full minute with both hands locked on the wheel, watching two figures standing at my front door. The man's hair had gone completely grey, his shoulders more stooped than I remembered. The woman still held herself ramrod straight, that same rigid posture I remembered from childhood, always braced against anything that might crack her carefully built world. Warren and Louise Calloway, my parents, 19 years, and there they were, standing on my porch like no time had passed at all. I thought about driving straight past, checking into a hotel, calling Ren, pretending I'd never come home. But I was 37 years old. I owned a company with my name behind it. I had built an entire life without them in it. I wasn't going to run from my own driveway. I got out and walked toward them. My father spoke first. "Adie. You look," he paused, taking in my coat, my car, my house. "Well, what are you doing here?" My mother stepped forward, more lines on her face now, her hair a careful shade of ash blonde that didn't quite match the rest of her. "We know about your son, Adrienne. We know you have a son." I just stared at her. "We'd like to meet him," my father added. "We'd like to reconnect as a family." Absurdity of it nearly made me laugh out loud. 19 years of dead silence, 19 years of pretending I'd ceased to exist, and here they were on my porch, asking to meet a grandson they'd never once bothered to check was even real. A grandson who did not exist. I let them into my house. I still can't fully explain why. Maybe some part of me needed to hear exactly what 19 years of silence had turned into. My father sat down in my living room the way he used to evaluate a property for purchase, cataloguing the hardwood, the built-in shelving, the original artwork. My mother perched on the very edge of my sofa, spine straight, hands folded in her lap like she was at church. "Your anniversary," I said. "That's what this is about." 45 years, my father said, almost smiling. "This Saturday we're hosting a celebration at the Grand Meridian Hotel, 300 guests. The mayor's office is sending someone, Pastor Ray's will be there, the whole Rotary board. What does that have to do with me?" My parents traded a glance. "There have been questions, Adrienne," my mother said. "About you, about what really happened all those years ago." "People talk," my father added. "A few of the older members remember we had a third child. They ask where you ended up. We always told people you'd moved to Australia for school. Lately the questions have gotten harder to deflect." "So you need me to make an appearance, prove the Calloways are one big happy family." "We need your son," my mother said, and her voice had steel in it now. "We've already told people about him, about our grandson. He should be there representing the next generation of this family." Room went dead quiet. "Who told you I have a son?" "We read the article," my father said, waving a hand. "The business feature. It mentioned a child, a successful company." "You've turned out better than we expected." Better than expected, as if my entire life had been a pass-fail exam I'd somehow scraped through. "And if I say no," my father's jaw set. "Let's not make this ugly, Adrienne." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a blank check, setting it on my coffee table like he was closing a real estate deal. "We're prepared to compensate you for your time. $300,000. Bring your son to the party, stay 3 hours, take a few family photos, and go back to your life." I looked at the check, then at my mother, who nodded like this was the single most reasonable proposal ever made. $300,000, I repeated. "That's what 19 years of silence is worth to you. We're also prepared to reinstate your share of the family trust," my mother said, leaning in like we were sharing a secret. "The combined estate is valued at just over $4.5 million. You'd be equal with Preston and Vanessa." I thought about that dry cleaner apartment, about working night shifts while 3-year-old Ren slept in a playpen behind a coffee counter because I couldn't afford childcare. I thought about every single year I'd clawed something out of nothing while they sat in their mountain house pretending I'd simply evaporated. And if I refuse, my father's face hardened. We'd rather not involve your son directly, Adrienne, but if it comes to that, we can reach out to him ourselves, explain the family history, help him understand where he comes from. It was a threat wrapped in gift paper, but a threat all the same. You'd contact my child, I said slowly, and tell him your version of events. We just want to be a family again, my mother said, spreading her hands like this was the simplest thing in the world. Isn't that what you've always wanted? I was about to answer when footsteps hit the staircase, and everything in that room changed in 1 second. Everything okay? I heard voices. Ren stopped at the bottom of the stairs, psychology textbook still in one hand, university hoodie, dark hair in a messy bun. Exactly what she was, a 19-year-old who'd been upstairs studying. My mother rose halfway to her feet, and I watched her expression cycle through confusion, calculation, and something close to horror. Who is this? This is Ren, I said, stepping slightly between my daughter and my parents. My daughter? Your daughter? My father's voice actually cracked. But we were told, the article said, child. You filled in the rest yourselves. Ren's eyes moved slowly from me to the two strangers sitting in our living room, and understanding dawned across her face all at once. These are them, she said. The grandparents who threw you out while you were pregnant with me, my mother flinched. It's not, it was more complicated than that. Which part was complicated? Ren said, arms crossed now. The part where you put a 16-year-old out in the snow, or the part where you spent 19 years pretending she didn't exist? Young lady, my father started. I'm not your young lady. I'm the grandchild you never bothered wanting to meet, the one you tried to erase before I was even born. Her voice stayed level, but I could see her hands shaking. I know everything. My mom never hid any of it from me. I know about the letter. I know about the trust. I know you told people she moved to Australia. My parents sat there in stunned silence. Ren looked at me. They came here looking for a grandson, didn't they? Someone they could put on display. Yes, she turned back to them with a smile that had zero warmth in it. Surprise. My father recovered faster than my mother did. I watched the lawyer part of his brain click back into gear, recalculating. A granddaughter, he said carefully. That actually works. We can adjust the story. Ren could come to the party as what? Ren cut in. The secret granddaughter you've been hiding for 19 years, the daughter of the teenager you threw away. We could say you were studying abroad, my mother said, and now she sounded like she was pleading. Recently returned. A surprise family reunion. I was born right here in Denver. I've never left this country. I'm a sophomore at the state university. Ren laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. Do you two even hear yourselves? You want me to lie to 300 people about my entire existence? The party is Saturday, my father said, checking his watch like time was the only thing that mattered in that room. You have 4 days. We need an answer. I stood up. I think you should leave. Adrienne, I'll consider what you've said, but not tonight, not with her standing right here. My mother rose, gathering her handbag. At the door she turned back. This is a chance to heal, Adrienne, to put the past where it belongs. Don't let old wounds cost you your future. I watched them walk to their Range Rover, watched my father help my mother into the passenger seat the exact same way he'd done 1,000 times before, like this was any ordinary Tuesday. When the car finally turned the corner, Ren spoke. You're not actually thinking about this, are you? I looked at my daughter, this fierce, sharp young woman I'd raised entirely on my own, the exact person Warren and Louise Calloway had tried to erase before she'd ever taken a breath. No, I said, but I'm not finished with them yet. Now let me ask you something, and I actually want you to answer this one in the comments. Have you ever stood face to face with people who threw you away, only to watch them come crawling back the second they needed something from you? Because if you have, you already know exactly what I was feeling in that moment. And if you haven't, buckle in, because what I did over the next 4 days is the part everybody keeps telling me they wish they'd had the guts to do. That night after Ren finally went to bed, I pulled a small fireproof box out of the back of my closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside sat the paperwork of my own erasure, the notarized disinheritance letter dated February 10, 2005, signed by Warren Allen Calloway and Louise Marie Calloway, witnessed by a notary named Gordon Reese. I remembered the exact day my father mailed it, certified, signature required, as though he needed proof on file that I'd received every syllable of it. 3 pages of airtight legal language, stating that Adrienne Louise Calloway hereby forfeits any and all claim to the Calloway family estate, and that the family bore no legal or moral obligation to the aforementioned party or any offspring thereof. Any offspring thereof. Ren reduced to 2 words in a legal filing, erased before she'd even been born. I photographed every page and backed the images up in 3 different places. Mom, I looked up. Ren stood in my doorway, arms wrapped around herself. Couldn't sleep either, she said, sitting beside me on the bed, looking down at the papers spread across the comforter. Is that the letter? Yes. She picked up the first page and read it slowly all the way through. When she finished, her eyes were bright, but she refused to let anything fall. They actually did this, she whispered. They actually cut you off like you were nothing. They did. What are you going to do with it? I looked at my daughter at 19 years of documented, calculated cruelty laid out in front of us. I don't know yet, I admitted. But whatever I decide, they don't get to pretend anymore. Ren was quiet for a moment. Then, I think I might have an idea. The next morning I made a call I hadn't made in over a year. Adie, is that you, sweetheart? Miss Dot answered on the 3rd ring. I told her everything, the visit, the invented grandson, the anniversary party, the check for $300,000. The line went quiet for a long stretch. Those people, she finally said. 19 years and they haven't changed one single bit. Miss Dot, I need to ask you something. That night, February 9th. Do you still have any of your old security footage? A pause, then almost a laugh. Honey, I never delete anything. Old nurse habit, you document everything. Let me go dig through my files. 20 minutes later my phone buzzed with an email. A grainy but completely unmistakable clip. A 16-year-old girl standing on a porch in falling snow, 9:52 p.m., February 9, 2005. Timestamp burned into the corner of the frame, the edge of my parents' front door visible behind me. That's you, Miss Dot said when I called her back. That's the exact night they threw you out into the cold. Would you let me confirm it publicly if it came to that? Honey, she said, and her voice had steel in it now. I have been waiting 19 years for someone to finally ask me that. Pieces of hard evidence, 2 living witnesses. Now I needed an actual plan. That evening I reread my own feature article, the one from the Denver Business Journal, still up online, shared thousands of times since it ran. I'd been careful in that interview, truthful, but not the whole truth. I'd mentioned being estranged from family without naming names or a city. I talked about becoming a mother at 17 without ever identifying the people who'd put me out. Not to shield them, to shield Ren from strangers connecting dots that had nothing to do with them. I scrolled through the comments, hundreds of them. This woman is unbelievable, thrown away by her own family, and she still built all this. I went through something so similar, this gives me actual hope. Someone needs to make a movie about her life. And then one posted only 2 weeks earlier that stopped me cold. Does anyone know if she's connected to the Calloway family downtown, the law firm people? Someone from my church mentioned it and now I can't stop wondering. That's how they found out. That single comment, 300 words on a public article, unraveled 19 years of a carefully maintained lie. My phone rang. Patricia. Adie, word on the street is your parents finally surfaced after 2 decades of dead silence. I laughed despite everything. News travels fast. This is Denver, everything travels fast around here. Her voice softened. What do you need? I don't know yet, perspective maybe. Here's what I know, she said. You have spent 19 years proving exactly who you are without a single ounce of their help. Do not let 3 hours at their party undo one bit of that. She was right. But by then I was already thinking a lot bigger than 3 hours. A phone call 2 days later, an area code I didn't recognize at first. I nearly let it roll to voicemail. Adie, it's Preston. I hadn't heard my brother's voice in 19 years. Deeper now, weathered, the voice of a man in his 40s instead of the 23-year-old who'd watched from an upstairs window while I stood in the snow. I know I have no right to call you, he said. I know you have 0 reason to talk to me, but there are things you need to hear before whatever happens next. Then talk. The grandson story he told me had started with our mother, who'd read the business feature 2 years ago and skimmed it, saw the words child and successful company, and built an entire fictional narrative around a brilliant young man carrying on the Calloway name. She told it to her church friends, her Rotary friends, spun an entire person into existence out of thin air. Dad went right along with it, Preston said, voice cracking. They've been dining out on your imaginary son for the better part of a year. I closed my eyes, even now. Even after everything, my parents' sheer capacity for self-deception still managed to stun me. Why tell me any of this, Preston? Because I was a coward. 19 years ago I should have walked down those stairs. I should have said something, anything. Vanessa and I have talked about it for years. We were wrong, we've always been wrong, and I want to try to make it right, whatever that even looks like now. He told me they'd both be at the anniversary party. That if I decided to come I wouldn't be walking in alone. I didn't know what to say to that. We stayed on the phone almost an hour. He told me about growing up under our parents' roof, the constant performance, approval handed out like currency to whoever complied and yanked away from whoever stepped out of line. Vanessa has 2 kids now, he said. She's terrified of raising them the exact same way we were raised, walking on eggshells, never sure if they're good enough. Why didn't either of you reach out in 19 years? A long pause. I almost did 5 years back, found your business number online, actually dialed it a dozen different times. His voice dropped. And every single time I hung up before it connected because talking to you meant admitting what I let happen, and I wasn't ready for that. What changed? Watching them show up on your porch demanding a grandson that doesn't exist. Watching them try to buy you like a prop for an anniversary photo. It made me realize if I don't say something now, I never will, and I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I failed you twice. Before he hung up, he told me one more thing. The anniversary party was going to be live streamed to the church's social media page, Pastor Ray's idea, a show of unity for the congregation. 300 people in the room. No telling how many more watching online. 2 days before the party, my father called directly, no preamble. Adrienne, we're running out of time. $300,000 full reinstatement in the trust, final offer. I've talked to Preston. Silence on the line. He told me about the grandson story you've been telling people, the one you invented from an article you didn't bother reading properly. That's not, we may have embellished slightly. You invented an entire human being. You've been bragging about your successful grandson for months, a grandson who does not exist. Adrienne, his voice hardened, I don't appreciate this tone after everything we're offering. What exactly are you offering? Money to perform for your friends, a seat at a trust you used to erase me from in the first place. I kept my voice level, steady. You're not offering me anything, you're trying to buy your way out of a lie you built yourselves. You have no right to judge us. You're the one who destroyed this family, who brought shame down on all of us. I was 16. I was pregnant and terrified, and I needed my parents to be my parents, and you threw me out like garbage and spent 19 years pretending I'd died. If you don't show up to this party, Adrienne, you will never get another chance to be part of this family. You said that exact same thing 19 years ago, and you know what? I built a better life without you than I ever would have built with you. We'll see about that. He hung up. I sat in my office afterward, heart hammering, running the numbers in my head. 4 days, 300 guests, 1 live stream. It was time to stop letting them write the story. That night I sat at my dining table with Ren and Patricia. They want a performance, Patricia said, turning her wine glass slowly. They want you to walk in, smile for the cameras, and quietly validate 19 years of lies. They want to use you, Ren added, the exact same way they've always used you, as something to manage, never someone to love. I looked at both of them, my mentor and my daughter, the family I had actually built for myself out of nothing. I'm going to that party. Ren's head snapped up. Not to give them what they want, to give myself what I actually need. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos of the disinheritance letter, Miss Dott's security footage, the business article. They have spent 19 years controlling my story, telling people I went to Australia, inventing a grandson, making me disappear on command. And you want to undisappear, Patricia said slowly. I want to tell the truth in front of every single person who matters to them on their stage, at their party, during their precious live stream. I took a breath. Not to humiliate them, to stop letting them pretend I don't exist. I'm coming with you, Ren said, no hesitation at all. They need to see who I actually am, not their imaginary grandson, me. I reached for her hand. Are you sure this could get? I've spent my entire life knowing my grandparents chose their reputation over my existence before I was even born, I'm sure. I called Preston that night. Your offer to stand with me, does it still stand? Vanessa and I already talked, we're ready. Then I need one more thing from you, don't warn Mom and Dad I'm coming. Done. Good. I looked out at the Denver skyline, at the entire life I'd built out of practically nothing, because in 4 days I was going to show every single person in that ballroom exactly what family actually means. If you've made it this far, you already know this next part is where everything blows up, so hit that follow now, because trust me, you do not want to accidentally miss what happens on that stage. Saturday evening, the Grand Meridian's main ballroom looked exactly like something my parents would have chosen, crystal chandeliers, white linen pressed to a knife's edge, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my first month's rent above that dry cleaner. 300 guests in formal wear, champagne flutes in hand, trading small talk about golf handicaps and investment portfolios. I stood at the entrance with Ren beside me. She'd chosen a deep green dress, simple and elegant. I wore black, professional, understated, impossible to look away from. You okay? She whispered. I'm about to crash my parents' 45th anniversary party and tell 300 people they've been lying for 19 years. I squeezed her hand. I'm terrified. That's not what I asked. I looked at this incredible young woman who'd grown up knowing her own grandparents had tried to erase her, and had built her own strength out of that knowledge instead of letting it break her. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. We walked in. The room was arranged around a raised platform where my parents would give their speeches. A small camera crew was setting up the live feed for the church's page. I could already see the little red recording light blinking. And there they were, Warren and Louise Calloway, standing on that stage surrounded by well-wishers, my mother in champagne-coloured silk, my father in a tailored navy suit, both of them glowing with the confidence of people who genuinely believed they had already won. They hadn't noticed us yet, but heads were starting to turn near the door. Somebody whispered, "Wait, is that her? The daughter from that article?" The whisper spread through the crowd like ripples across still water. Then my mother looked up. My father had just started his speech. 45 years of marriage have taught me one thing above all else: family is everything. Louise and I built our entire lives around that single principle. Our children, our community, our faith. His voice carried across the ballroom, caught by the microphone, captured live by the camera. 300 faces watched him with soft, adoring smiles. I could see the comment section scrolling on the little monitor beside the stage. Beautiful couple. God bless the Calloway family. What an inspiration. My mother spotted me first. Her smile froze mid-formation. Her hand clamped down on my father's arm. He followed her gaze and stopped mid-sentence. The murmurs spread through the room, heads turning one after another. Someone near the back said, loud enough to carry, "That's Warren's daughter. I thought she moved to Australia." My father recovered his footing first. As I was saying, family has always, I started walking toward the stage. The crowd parted, not dramatically, just people stepping aside instinctively, sensing something was coming. Ren walked beside me, chin up, steps steady. Preston appeared at the edge of the crowd, Vanessa right beside him. Neither of them tried to stop me, they just watched. "Adrienne," my father's voice cracked over the speakers. "What a surprise, we weren't expecting." I climbed the 3 steps onto the platform. The camera swung to track me. I could feel every single pair of eyes in that room, plus however many were watching a screen somewhere. "Hello, Dad." I took the microphone straight out of his hand before he could stop me. "Hello, everyone. My name is Adrienne Calloway. For those of you who don't know me, and most of you don't, I'm Warren and Louise's youngest daughter." I paused. "The one you were told moved to Australia 19 years ago." Silence in that ballroom was total. "I never went to Australia," I continued. On February 9, 2005, 19 years ago tomorrow, my parents found out I was pregnant at 16. That same night, they put me out of their house. Their lawyer drew up papers disowning me. They told me word for word that I was dead to them. Someone gasped audibly. The live comments were exploding across that monitor faster than anyone could keep up reading them. They told everyone I'd gone abroad. For 19 years, they let people believe I simply didn't exist. I reached into my bag and pulled out the notarized letter. This is the document my father mailed me 3 days after he threw me out. It states I forfeit all inheritance rights, and that this family has, and I'm quoting directly, "no legal or moral obligation to the aforementioned party or any offspring thereof." I held it up toward the camera, close enough to read. "That offspring is my daughter, Ren." I gestured to where she stood at the edge of the stage. "Your granddaughter, who you have never once met. The grandson you've been telling all your friends about for months doesn't exist. You invented him out of a magazine article you didn't even bother reading properly." My father lunged for the microphone. "Adrienne, this is not the place." "Then when is the place, Dad?" I held it out of his reach. "When exactly is the right moment to finally tell the truth? You showed up at my house last week offering me $300,000 to parade a fictional grandson in front of your friends. $300,000 to make your lie look real." I turned to the crowd, to the camera, to the 300 witnesses in the room and however many more online. "I didn't come here for the money. I came here because I am done being erased." Pastor Reyes stepped forward from the crowd. "Warren, is this true?" My father couldn't answer. My mother started crying, real tears, ruining the careful makeup she'd spent hours perfecting. "Warren," the pastor's voice was firm now, "I asked you a direct question. Is what your daughter is telling us the truth?" The whole room held its breath. My father looked out at the crowd, the mayor's representative, the Rotary Board, the church elders who'd respected him for decades, and I watched him search for an angle, some way to spin this into something acceptable. He couldn't find one. "It was a difficult time," he finally said. "We made decisions that—" "You threw me out because I was pregnant," I said, my voice staying level. because your reputation mattered more to you than your own child did. Preston walked up onto the stage, then Vanessa. They stood beside me, not touching, just present. She's telling the truth, Preston said, and his voice carried through every corner of that ballroom. Vanessa and I were there that night. We watched from the window while our parents put our 16-year-old sister out into the snow. We never said one word. That was our failure too. The murmurs turned into a full roar. Phones were already coming out everywhere, people recording, texting. I could see the mayor's aide already moving toward the exit. "Miss Dot," I said, pointing toward a silver-haired woman seated in the back row who'd flown in from Denver that very morning. Our old neighbor. She saw everything that night. She has the photos, the timestamps. Dorothy Whitfield rose to her feet, chin lifted high. I watched that child stand alone in the snow for almost 15 minutes before she finally walked away. I took her in. The Calloway family never once asked where she'd gone. The live comments detonated. "This is insane. Those poor girls. Someone needs to call the news station." Can you imagine standing exactly where my parents stood in that moment? 45 years of reputation, every ounce of community respect, an image polished for decades, all of it cracking apart in under 3 minutes of plain truth. If you think they had it coming, drop a thumbs up right now and keep watching, because what happened after this surprised even me. I handed the microphone back to my father. He took it reflexively, like a man still in shock. "I didn't come here to destroy you," I said, quiet enough that only the people on the stage could hear it. "I came here to stop being invisible." Then I turned back to the crowd and raised my voice again. "I'm not asking for anyone's pity. I don't need it. 19 years ago I was thrown out with absolutely nothing. Today I run a design company right here in Denver with 18 employees and over $3.5 million a year in revenue. My daughter is a sophomore at the state university. We built every bit of this without $1 of Calloway money." I looked straight into the camera. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my parents tried to buy my silence last week. $300,000 to make their lie feel true. I'm here because they deserve to face what they did, not privately, but in front of the exact community they've always valued more than their own children." Ren stepped up onto the stage and took my hand. "I'm Ren," she said into the microphone, "the granddaughter they never wanted." She looked directly at Warren and Louise. "I'm 19. I have known my entire life that my grandparents chose their reputation over my mother and by extension over me. You could have known me. You could have watched me grow up, come to my birthdays, my school plays, my high school graduation." Her voice cracked just slightly. "You chose not to. And you don't get to pretend that was ever our fault." She handed back the microphone and walked off the stage. I followed her. Behind us, the ballroom dissolved into chaos. At the door, I turned back one last time. "One more thing." My voice cut clean through the noise. "I'm not going to sue either of you. I'm not going to contest the will or demand a single dollar. I'm keeping the disinheritance papers you signed 19 years ago exactly the way they are, as a reminder of who you really are, not as a weapon." My father looked up, confusion crossing his face. He'd braced for a lawsuit for demands, not this. "But understand something. If either of you ever spreads another lie about me or my daughter, if you ever try to contact Ren without her consent, or spin up some new story for your friends, I will make every single document I have public. I have the letter, I have time-stamped footage, I have living witnesses." I nodded toward Miss Dot. "And now I have 300 more." Patricia appeared at my elbow. "Ready?" "Yes." As we walked out through the doors, I heard Pastor Ray's voice behind us. "Warren, Louise, I think the three of us need to talk, privately, tonight." Ren squeezed my hand as we stepped out into the cold night air, and for the first time in 19 years I felt like I could actually breathe. "Mom." Her voice had gone small. "Did we do the right thing?" I thought about 16-year-old me standing in the snow with a duffel bag and a baby I hadn't planned for. I thought about every single year of building, surviving, fighting to become somebody worth being. "We told the truth," I said. "We set a boundary. We let them face exactly what their own choices cost them." I pulled her into a hug. "That's not revenge, that's justice." "What happens now?" I looked up at the night sky. "Now we go home. But here's the thing nobody tells you about a moment like that one. Walking off that stage isn't the ending. It's just the part where the real consequences start landing, one after another, faster than either of us expected. And what happened over the following 7 days changed absolutely everything, for my parents, for my brother and sister, and honestly for me too, in ways I never saw coming. If this story has grabbed you even a little, hit subscribe right now, because the fallout from that night, the calls, the resignations, the moment my mother finally picked up the phone, that's exactly where I'm picking things up in the next video. You are not going to want to miss it. Like this video if you think the Callaways finally got what they'd been avoiding for 19 years, and tell me in the comments what you think my mother said when she finally called me. I'll see you in the next one. The fallout started within hours. By midnight, someone in that ballroom had already uploaded the clip. By morning, it had 40,000 views. I found out most of the details from Preston, who called me Sunday morning with a full report. The mayor's aide walked out without saying a single word to my father. Mrs. Halloway from the church board followed right behind her. The Bennetts, you'd remember them, they own half the car dealerships in the county, actually stopped to apologize to Preston on their way out. Apologized for never once asking where I'd gone, for simply swallowing whatever story they'd been handed. By Sunday afternoon, a short piece ran in the local paper. Prominent attorney's anniversary gala ends in family revelation. The article itself was carefully neutral. The comments underneath it were not. I sat in that congregation for years, I had no idea. Warren Calloway drew up my will. What kind of man does this to his own daughter? Nobody who watched that live stream will ever see that family the same way again. By Monday, my father had quietly resigned his position as an elder at Cornerstone Baptist. Personal reasons, the church bulletin said. Everybody knew exactly what that meant. By Wednesday, the Rotary Board announced they'd be reviewing membership standards at their next meeting, and my father's name came up specifically. And through all of it, I was back in my office, answering client emails like it was any other week. 9 new inquiries came in that week alone, people who'd read the business feature 2 years earlier and only now connected it to the video everyone was sharing. Some kinds of fallout only destroy. Mine did something else too, it clarified. That Thursday, a reporter called, the same one who'd written my original profile. Adie, I don't know if you've seen it, but your video is everywhere. We'd love to do a follow-up. The CEO who confronted her past, what do you think? Let me get back to you, I told her. Of course, just know the response has been overwhelming. People are connecting with your story, a lot of them have been through something similar. She wasn't wrong. My company's inbox flooded with messages that had nothing to do with design. Your video made me call my sister for the first time in 11 years. I was a teen mom too. Thank you for showing me what's possible. You proved that building a good life is the best answer to people who tried to break you. Saturday, Preston and Vanessa came up to my place for their first visit in 19 years. We sat in my living room, the exact same room where our parents had tried to buy my silence 2 weeks earlier, and talked for 6 hours straight. Preston told me about the years of guilt he'd been carrying. Vanessa cried the moment she met Ren. Her kids, 8 and 11, played in my backyard while the adults tried to piece something back together out of the wreckage. I'm sorry, Preston said. I know it doesn't cover 19 years. No, I agreed. It doesn't, but it's a start. Ren watched from the doorway, this young woman who'd grown up without any extended family at all, finally getting a glimpse of what one might actually look like. Imperfect, complicated, real. 1 week after the party, my phone lit up with an area code I still recognized without even trying. My mother. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it in my life. I'm not calling to apologize, she said. I don't know how to apologize for what we did. Then why are you calling? A long silence. I watched the video, I've watched it 11 times now. Another pause. I keep looking at your face while you're talking, trying to find my daughter in there, the one I put out in the snow. I didn't say anything. Your father is, she trailed off. He's not doing well. The church, the Rotary, his old colleagues, everyone looks at him differently now. He doesn't know how to carry it. I didn't do this to punish either of you. I know, she said. I know that now. Her voice cracked. You did it because you had to stop pretending, because we never left you any other choice. Did you actually call, Mom? The longest silence of the whole conversation. Because I wanted to hear your voice, because I haven't heard it in 19 years and I realized I might never get to again. She was crying now. Because my granddaughter stood on that stage and told 300 people she'd spent her whole life knowing we didn't want her, and I couldn't breathe. I closed my eyes. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said. I might never be, but I'm not going to hang up on you either. That's more than I owe you. Yes, she said. It is. We stayed on the line another minute, neither of us speaking. Then she said goodbye. She didn't ask for another chance. She didn't demand anything at all. Maybe that was progress. Or maybe it was just the first small step of a very long road that may never fully finish. This past Thanksgiving, my dining table, the one I bought at an estate sale years back and refinished myself, sat 12 people for the first time ever. Ren on my right, Patricia on my left. Miss Dot, who'd flown in again, was teaching my nephew how to fold napkins into swans. Preston carved the turkey while his wife set food out on the porch. Vanessa's daughters argued over who got to light the candles. My parents weren't there. We hadn't reached that point yet. Maybe we never will. But looking around that table, something became clear to me. I had spent 19 years mourning a family that had never really wanted me in the first place. Now I was surrounded by people who had actually chosen to be there, who wanted to know me, not a version of me, not a prop for somebody's image, just me. Ren stood up to give a toast. "I wrote something for Mom," she said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "When I was little, I used to ask why I never had grandparents like the other kids at school. Mom always told me the truth, that they made a choice, and that choice was never about me. It took me years to really understand what that meant." She looked at me. "But I understand it now. And I know that everything I have, everything I am, is because you never let their choice define either of us." She raised her glass. "To the family we build, not the one we happen to be born into." Everyone drank. Later, after the dishes were cleared and everyone had scattered through the house with their coffee, I stood at the kitchen window. Ren came and stood beside me. "You okay?" I looked at my daughter, at this entire life I'd assembled out of the ruins of everything I once thought I'd lost. "Yeah," I said. "I really am. If you're still with me, let me leave you with this. 19 years ago, I was a terrified 16-year-old standing in the snow, watching my parents' taillights disappear down the street. I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left at all. I was wrong. I had Eli for as long as I got to have him. I had Miss Dot, who opened her door when she didn't owe me a single thing. I had Patricia, who saw something worth building in a young mother with nothing but stubbornness. I had Ren, who grew up knowing the whole truth and chose to become fierce instead of bitter about it. And eventually, I had myself, the version of me who finally stopped asking permission to exist. If you're in a situation right now where your own family makes you feel like you have to shrink yourself down just to be acceptable, like your entire worth depends on their approval, I understand that. I've lived it. But here's what I know for certain now: you do not need their validation to know your own value. Setting a boundary isn't revenge, it's survival. And sometimes the family you build with your own hands turns out stronger than the one you were simply born into. My parents still haven't really apologized, not properly. My father has barely spoken since that night. My mother calls sometimes and I answer when I have it in me. Preston and Vanessa keep trying. We're all trying. But I'm done waiting around for them to change. I'm living the life I actually built, the one I earned, the one that belongs entirely to me. That's not a happy ending. It's a real one, and real endings don't need applause. They just need the truth. Thank you for staying with my story all the way through. If any part of it meant something to you, if it made you feel a little less alone tonight, share it, hit like, subscribe for more stories like this one, because everyone out there deserves to actually be seen.